Coming up on Market to Market, a series of deadly tornadoes cuts a path of destruction across Oklahoma. Further north, more temperate weather leads to significant progress in spring planting. And legislation authorizing federal farm and nutrition programs makes its way to the Senate floor. Those stories and market analysis with Jamey Kohake next.
Funding for Market to Market is provided by DuPont Pioneer, working with growers to match the right product to the right acre. Science with service, delivering success. This is the Friday, May 24 edition of Market to Market, the weekly journal of rural America.
Hello, I'm Mike Pearson. When Oscar Hammerstein penned the lyrics of the Broadway musical Oklahoma, he wrote of an agrarian people who had plenty of heart and plenty of hope, who literally belonged to the land. But the winds that came sweeping down the plain this week were a series of twisters that cut a deadly path of destruction. EF5 tornadoes, like the one that roared through Moore, Oklahoma, packed the most violent winds on Earth. Ironically, the strongest wind ever measured was 302 miles per hour, when an EF5 struck the very same town in May of 1999. And experts say the EF5 that devastated Moore on Monday released more energy than the atomic bomb that leveled Hiroshima.
My goodness, it was the scariest thing ever. So scary. You literally see it coming down the road, just shredding stuff up. And then, you just don't think, I'm going to survive this.
Moore, Oklahoma knows the destructive power of tornadoes all too well. The EF5 twister that demolished the Oklahoma City suburb Monday was the town's fourth decimating touchdown since 1999. EF4 tornadoes ravaged the area in 2003 and 2010, while another EF5 racked up over $1 billion worth of damage almost 15 years ago. This week, cyclones wreaked havoc from Texas to Minnesota.
Look at the tree damage. Look at all the debris in the air.
Shawnee, Oklahoma saw heavy damage, along with nearby Wichita, Kansas, and parts of Iowa. But the worst devastation was endured in Moore, Oklahoma, where a 2-mile-wide funnel reminded the residents of the area's previous storms.
Oh my God, it's devastating damage.
The massive twister crushed homes and killed more than 20 people. Survivors in Moore may have the 1999 tornado to thank for safety precautions, which could have prevented additional fatalities. Over the past decade, federal grant dollars have helped homeowners cover the cost of safe rooms that proved their worth this time around. Local authorities are expected to propose an ordinance to include storm shelters in all new home construction. Cleanup efforts were hampered later in the week as a band of thunderstorms battered the Sooner State. Hail, heavy rain, and high winds slowed the recovery operation, which had just begun to accelerate once all missing persons were accounted for.
The people of Moore should know that their country will remain on the ground, there for them, beside them, as long as it takes. For there are homes and schools to rebuild, businesses and hospitals to reopen, their parents to console, first responders to comfort, and, of course, frightened children who will need our continued love and attention.
Though severe weather cut a swath across the nation's midsection, only minimal harm was dealt to winter wheat. Persistent drought in Oklahoma had already slashed estimated prospects for this year's crop, while hail damage in isolated areas of Kansas is not expected to affect total production. Earlier this month, crop consultants estimated Oklahoma's wheat production at over 85 million bushels, roughly half as much as last year. Experts mostly welcomed moisture from the storms, claiming wheat blown down by high winds is expected to come back, barring extensive impairment to stems. According to USDA, 43% of the winter wheat crop had formed heads, up from 14 percentage points a week earlier. However, the crop still trails the 5-year pace of 62%. Further north, Mother Nature was more forgiving to producers. Though held back by a wet spring, farmers took to their tractors en masse last week. A record amount of corn acreage was planted, even in areas where conditions are still far from perfect. Until last week, Corn Belt farmers were enduring their slowest planting season in decades because of the wet weather. But USDA said in its weekly crop progress update that 71% of the nation's corn had been sown as of Sunday. That's up from just 28% a week earlier, and it brought the figure closer in line to the 79% average that farmers had planted by this point in the season over the previous 5 years. After declining nearly 6% in March, orders for long-lasting manufactured goods rebounded last month, due largely to increased demand for aircraft and stronger business investment. The Commerce Department reported Friday that orders for durable goods rose 3.3% in April. The improvement was due primarily to a 16% increase in demand for commercial aircraft and a 53% spike in orders for military aircraft. Stripping out the volatile transportation sector, however, orders still rose 1.3%. Earlier this week, the government reported that sales of new homes increased 2.3% in April to a seasonally adjusted annual rate of 454,000 units. That's just barely below January's pace of 458,000, which was the fastest since July of 2008. And the median sales price also jumped 8.3% last month to a record high of $271,600. An improving economy eases concerns that federal spending cuts and tax increases might prompt consumers to tighten their purse strings. But fiscal hawks continue their efforts to rein in government spending. And this week, Senate lawmakers set their sights on the federal program authorizing farm and nutritional spending, better known as the Farm Bill.
Which is what this does, is we're going to reduce participation in crop insurance, reduce coverage, and drive up premiums, and most importantly...
Work began in earnest this week on the Agriculture Reform, Food, and Jobs Act of 2013 in the Senate. Promising $24 billion in deficit reduction over the next 10 years, the bipartisan bill passed out of committee last week on a 15-5 vote. Direct payments to farmers would be phased out for a savings of $5 billion annually. Direct payments were often singled out as government largesse because they were made every year regardless of crop prices or yield. Of the $500 billion to be appropriated for the measure over the next 5 years, only 20% goes to agricultural programs. The remainder of the cost, nearly $400 billion, pays for nutritional assistance programs. However, according to some sources, proposed cuts to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, would have devastating effects on its participants. 1 in 7 Americans currently rely on the SNAP program, formerly known as food stamps. By some estimates, cuts of $4.1 billion over the next 10 years would take nearly $90 per month out of the pockets of those living below the poverty line. Both sides of the aisle lined up this week to add their twist to the omnibus legislation. The 150 amendments up for consideration ranged from sugar subsidy reform to the authorization of industrial hemp farming. An amendment by Oklahoma Senator James Inhofe, a Republican, would have turned administration of SNAP over to state governments. That amendment was defeated 60-36. Additions by Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, a Democrat from New York, sought to replace cuts to SNAP by cutting the federal crop insurance program, but her amendment was defeated by an even larger margin. To help provide a safety net for farmers, new programs based on minimum prices are part of the Farm Bill. In addition to these supports, crop insurance, another part of the safety net, received its fair share of amendments. Under the legislation passed out of the Senate Agriculture Committee last week, taxpayers would foot 64% of the bill for farmers. Senator Dick Durbin proposed reform to the crop insurance program, requiring farmers with an adjusted gross income of $750,000, or about 1% of the nation's 2 million farmers, to pay 15% more of their bill. The Illinois Democrat estimated only 20,000 of the nation's wealthiest farmers would be affected by the proposal.
20,000 out of 2 million. 20,000. Well, what's it worth that those 20,000 farmers pay 15% more? $1 billion a year. $1 billion a year coming into our treasury.
That amendment passed 59-33. Senator Kay Hagan proposed an amendment to help prevent fraud with the same federal program. The North Carolina Democrats' motion handily passed 94-0. An amendment requiring the labeling of genetically modified foods was defeated on a 71-27 vote. And senators from sugar-producing states were able to hold off a move by northern lawmakers to cut subsidies. Democratic Senator Jane Shaheen from New Hampshire moved to reduce price supports that often give U.S. sugar producers twice the world price for the bounty of their harvest. That subsidy reforming amendment was defeated on a 54-45 vote. In a statement, the White House said it supports the Senate version of the Farm Bill, but would like to see more savings in crop insurance and farm subsidy programs. It did not specify how large a cut it was seeking. The Senate is expected to continue debate when it returns from the Memorial Day recess, while the House is preparing to take up the measure sometime next month.
Next, the market-to-market report.
News of significant planting progress weighed heavily on grain futures early in the week, but strong Chinese demand pushed prices into the black in later sessions. For the week, July wheat gained 14 cents, while the nearby corn contract moved a nickel higher. Old crop soybeans also rallied as the July contract gained 28 cents. Nearby meal prices followed suit with an upward move of $3.15 per ton. In the softs, cotton remained under pressure this week as the December contract lost another $2 per hundredweight. In the dairy market, June Class 3 milk declined by 70 cents, while the July contract moved 50 cents lower. Over in livestock, the August cattle contract gained 67 cents, August feeders advanced by $1.18, and the July lean hog contract gained $2.33. In the financials, the euro gained 88 basis points against the dollar, crude oil declined by more than $2 per barrel, COMEX gold advanced by $22 per ounce, and the Goldman Sachs Commodity Index moved nearly 10 points lower to settle at 625.10. Here now to lend us his insight on these and other trends is one of our regular market analysts, Jamey Kohake. Jamey, welcome back.
Thanks, Mike.
The big piece of economic news out this week was the minutes from the Federal Reserve. Could you help us unpack that? How did that impact the trade this week in the outside markets?
It spurred some profit taking, a lot of nervousness. The big talk that came out of that meeting is, when is the tapering going to start? When will we slow down the bond purchasing of $85 billion a month? And Bernanke did not give out any clear signals or clear hints, but a lot of speculation that it could be this fall, even maybe closer to their August meeting. There's a meeting in June, and then again in August. And the S&P had a big down day reversal that day, and lots of traders calling the highs are in. I'm not there yet. I'm not saying it's over with. Obviously, the line in the sand now is 1680 for the September contract, but I think we'd come back up and retest it one more time and see what's up there. But it's going to be a shaky market all summer, and I think that $1,700 mark will spur some heavy profit taking again.
And the market's pretty much going to be depending on what guidance the Federal Reserve offers, it sounds like. That's going to be the determining feature.
Yeah, of how much money would come out based off of that. Without it, the market stays supported like it has been the last several years, and I'm still thinking the trend is up, and just there'll be shorts flushed out here again soon.
Well, let's talk about how that may have affected the other markets. We did see a price rise in gold. Was that directly related to potentially pulling back QE?
A little bit of that, also a spillover from the currency sector as well. Gold's seen some profit taking, some heavy selling. Specs are actually short gold now. I think we have to get about 1490 August to really do any type of short covering to see new money flow in. Until then, I'm bearish until we get back above that mark. And I think the market's just weak right now.
And you mentioned currencies. We did see the dollar take a little bit of a slide this week, down from the lofty highs we were in last week. What's driving that?
A lot of long liquidation, a lot of spread action versus the euro. The key number for the September dollar is 85. We get above that, I'm really bearish. Raw commodities, grains, ags, metals, everything. But we slid back a little bit this week, like you're saying, and back into more of a neutral zone right now. The euro as well has a nice trading range, 130 top side to sell into, 128 the bottom. So euro looks to be a little better trader's market right now.
Well, let's take a look at the grains. As we mentioned, we did have some good export news on wheat this week. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that's going to impact the market here in this next week?
Yeah, China bought quite a bit of wheat this week, and that did spur some short covering. I'm still bearish wheat right now. There's no major weather concerns worldwide. There's no supply problems worldwide either. So I'm bearish, looking to sell 755 December wheat. That's up close to some key moving averages, and would like to get short up in there until we could run into some more dire situations somewhere, weather or supply-wise.
Because as of right now, we're looking at a fairly large world supply, even if American production is curtailed.
That is correct, and also world prices are cheaper than ours are right now, and so we need to find that level where we can remain competitively longer term.
And that level is going to be harder and harder to find if that dollar gets into that 85 range.
Yes, exactly, and that's why I think the dollar would get above 85. It would turn the commodities very bearish.
All right, well, let's take a look at corn. We're continuing to see that inverse relationship on prices, old crop versus new crop. We did have a bit of good new crop news again on the exports to China this week. Can you talk to us a little bit about what your thoughts are this summer on old crop, and then what producers should be doing with their new crop?
Old crop, I think, remains supportive down around 640. We keep banging the 660, 665 mark and selling back up to 640 again. The 660 to 680 area roughly, that's the gap area from the March USDA report. And we can't get it filled. We keep sneaking up in there, coming right back down. I think July corn is fine longer term. We do have some tight supplies. There's very little farmer selling going on. So I think that stays in that range of 640, 680 area. I would be a seller at 675 to 680 if we would hit that.
And now looking at on the old crop again, basis has been historically strong all summer. Is the market anticipating that to stay strong? Should producers continue to look for basis to carry the weight to get them up into that $7 range on old crop corn?
I think they do here short term. We've seen that spread widen out up over $1.30 area, $1.25 this week, July versus Dece, and I think that remains very, very strong. I would add on down around $1.20 area, even down around closer to $1, just based off that tight basis and tight supply situation.
All right, well, let's take a look at new crop. What are your thoughts there? Where do you see a level of support for producers?
Surprisingly, the market is still very bearish. They're not pricing any weather premium at all in the market. There's still roughly 10 to 12 million acres yet to be planted up northern part of Iowa, North Dakota. The market does not seem concerned at all as we get near the prevent plant dates. I'm a little bit bearish too yet. The market is trading below the 50-day, the 100-day, and the 200-day moving averages. Technically, that's bearish. So I'm still selling into new crop. 550 is the mark that I'd like to get up into and sell into, then using the 100-day as a stop. I'm not going to stay married to my hedges all summer long, because I think we will see a weather scare, and could possibly push, 570, 580, but I'm selling 550 right now until we get more weather.
Now, as far as indicators for producers, the thing the market has been keeping an eye on these past few weeks has been crop progress. Now that we're roughly caught up with our 5-year average or close to it, what are the events that folks should be keeping an eye out on to see what could affect the market? Are there any big reports coming up that people need to keep an eye out for?
We'll have our monthly supply and demand. That won't be that much of a mover for the new crop. The new crop will be weather in these last few acres. I think there could be possibly 1 million to 2 million acres that may not get planted. And the market does not seem to care about that, nor has it yet to price it in. So I think that's the big kicker right there, is where does this, how fast does this last 10%, 15% get planted?
So before the market's going to take that into effect, we're going to have to get close to the prevent plant dates for those the northern tier of the states that haven't planted. Is that what's going to be the driver there, if those acres do make a difference?
Yes, I think that'll be the driving factor. Can we push, 550 area, or are we going back towards $5 again if we can get, most of it done next week or not?
Okay. Well, let's take a look at soybeans. Old crop soybeans had a busy day yesterday on Thursday. Can you talk to us a little bit about what's happening in the old crop market with the tight supplies and the relatively strong demand we're seeing?
Yeah, it was a wild ride this week, a gut wrencher for guys that play spreads or even just play the outrights with the July contract. Spreads moved out July versus November, $2.50 wide, up 40, 50 cents on Wednesday, Thursday, and then collapsed back to even. Some wild news out. Chinese crushers rumored to be caught short. Farmers selling ensued very heavily at the $15 mark. And the commercials, obviously got hedged up there as well, too.
Now, on the farmer selling at the cash sales, that $15 mark seemed to be a psychological line in the sand for a lot of producers to get their beans to market. Is that going to hold going forward? Are we going to need to see that $15 level to keep getting beans out of the countryside, do you think?
I think we'll need to keep pressing higher to pry the last few beans that could be laying around somewhere. I'm not sure where the beans are. It's dire situations for the crushers. I do think farmers did get a little bit surprised, the ones that may not pay a lot of attention to the basis or to pricing. Just a week ago, $1.50 over futures, and you go to price, Thursday or Friday this week, and it's off November futures, not off to July. So kind of a big wake-up call for some guys there, but I do think that probably need more loose. Yeah, we'll have to be plus 15 coming into summer.
So advice for producers with beans still in the bin, hold on, wait and see if this strengthens?
I would hold on to it. I would even wait to see what happens once we get into first notice day with the July futures contract. I think the beans could go wild then and give a better pricing opportunity late June, first part of July.
All right, now looking at new crop, what are your thoughts there for producers?
I'm bearish new crop as well too. I'd love to sell a 1280. That's the 200-day moving average. We'd love to get up in there and get short. We're trading around 12.5 right now, but I think there's plenty of downside for the beans. I think we'll see a few more acres. There's no big situation weather-wise in South America. There are some port strikes off and on that have supported the nearby July, but new crop, nothing dire yet. Maybe some late planting, but I think if you can get 1280, the 200-day moving average, I would be a seller. Look for some big profits.
Last week we saw Informa come out with their acreage estimates, and they were estimating 77 million and change acres in soybeans. Do you think as we get closer and closer to this prevent plant date, that's going to climb? Are we going to see continued acreage over that 77 million, do you think?
I think we end up 78 and a half myself, as long as we stay wet for this coming week, which looks like we probably will, most areas that ain't planted. But yeah, I think there's up to 2 million acres of corn that may not get planted that would go to beans.
May go to beans. Well, let's take a look at cotton. Cotton has been on a roller coaster ride. We've been talking about the Chinese influence in that market with their buying and holding. This week we saw a $2 slide. What's happening in cotton?
China there is same story like you're saying. They've been very quiet in the cotton market, and that spurred some long liquidation. We've also seen some decent moisture moving down south, especially in the Texas cotton field areas, and that has brought the market down. If December cotton would close consistently a couple days below 83, I think this thing could get uglier to the downside quick. And also got to worry about what we talked about earlier with the U.S. dollar index, how high that could shoot. But anything below 83 would bust out of the range, and it looks ugly technically.
Technically, do you see a support level below that 83?
I think you get flushed down to 81 area quick. Just cotton's a violent market, a no mercy market, and I think it could get ugly.
Be careful.
Yeah.
If you're trading in cotton. Well, let's take a look at livestock. We've been on an interesting ride, cash market versus future market in live cattle these past few weeks. Is that continuing? Are we still seeing that widespread between cash and futures?
We are. The cattle market's still the same old story. It's pretty much since Christmas, just been a bloodbath with the futures, feeder cattle, and the fats. The August feeder cattle carrying a huge premium to the index there. Saw a wild ride this week, a couple of $2 day moves, and just a violent ride. But yeah, the live cattle we're trading, nearby around 119, cash at 125. The question is, are the spring lows in, or is this a summer high? That's what I get asked pretty much all day long. I think the futures market is supported in this area, 118, 119. I'm not looking to sell into it at all. I think if you're looking to get short like August, you got to be up around 121.5, the 100-day moving average. I think the cash market comes on down even further, and the futures stay flat, and they merge up somewhere around 121 eventually. But I don't see any major relief at all for the cattlemen right now.
This continuing until we get some significant demand in place or export news? What would it take to really pop this market out of these doldrums?
Surprisingly, the exports were decent this week and have been. Box beef, record highs. We had big bookings for this 3-day weekend. The problem is we got cheap chicken. The trade is very, very nervous. So we're going to see that demand shift over there this summer, and the demand will back off, and that's what we're trying to price in yet right now.
Certainly. People looking for a more affordable protein, looking at chicken. Now, as we look at live cattle, are we going to see those same fundamentals carried over into feeders? Are they just going to be riding coattails here, or are we still looking at primarily
a lot prices? Of spillover there here short term. More will depend on here come late June, like July, with the corn market affecting the feeders. But yeah, you go back to the first part of January, this feeder market just been a bloodbath. And I think we're getting a little bit overdone and looking for some short covering. But I don't think we're going to see a 38 or 50% retracement yet right now. I think it's just a short-term 2 to 4 cent bounce, and we go more range-bound short-term.
Range-bound through the early part of the summer into your June, July
yeah,
timeframe.
until we see what's going on with the corn crop.
Okay. Now, as we're talking about more affordable sources of protein, we look at the pork market. They have been competitively priced compared to beef. Are we seeing that carry forward into the markets? Are we seeing producers being able to make any money in pork?
Not any money right now, pretty much all for the pork guys. It's been pretty bloody there as well, too. We got a record amount of stocks on hand. We saw this week with the cold storage. We saw an early week rally, and the cold storage slowed it down and pretty much limited the new buying. Hogs, I think, are more range-bound. I think you buy the breaks. You get down around 80 for the October, get around 89, 90 for the August. I think you take a shot at getting long or selling deep out of the money puts. But I would limit myself on any new spec money from the long side at current levels. Look for some little more hedge pressure off of the cold storage.
Okay, and that's going to be a continual to be bearish factor all summer again until we get demand or export news to come back?
A little bit of both, yeah, but I think the hogs are a little more better shape than the beef market is right now. I think hogs are more range bound and the breaks be bought in a little bit heavier.
All right, well, let's take a look at crude oil. With the little bit of a slide in the dollar, we did see a little bit of a drop in crude oil prices. Was that a direct linkage, or are we looking more at a lessening of demand helping these crude oil prices fall a touch?
Demand is backing off, and we got ample supplies too with crude right now. I'm bearish crude. I'd like to sell July up around 98 if we could get a correction up into that area. But I think the energy market, especially at the pump, I think it's put in a short-term high, and we'll see demand slow down and back these prices off a little bit. I don't think we're going 50 cents lower at the pump, but I think short-term the market has peaked and looking for some long liquidation.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jamey. Appreciate you being here with us tonight. That wraps up this edition of Market to Market. But if you'd like more information from Jamey on where these markets just may be headed, visit the Market Plus page at our website. You'll find expanded market analysis, audio podcasts, and streaming video of our program, as well as links to our Twitter feed and Facebook account, all free at the Market to Market website. Be sure to join us again next week when we'll examine efforts to preserve America's agricultural heritage by saving seed. So until next time, thanks for watching. I'm Mike Pearson. Have a great week.
Market to Market is a production of Iowa Public Television, which is solely responsible for its content. Funding for Market to Market is provided by DuPont Pioneer, working with growers to match the right product to the right acre. Science with service, delivering success.